Hey, I'm Flavian and part of Cluster Aviation team. We do independent aircraft management oversight across Europe. This is our channel. We talk about what actually happens behind the scenes in business aviation. The real stuff, operational costs, contract traps, things that nobody explains to aircraft owners until it's too late. We'll also have interviews, industry guests, deep dives into regulations, all of it. But today I want to tell you a story, a real one, about a company that had 55,000 euros hiding inside their ground handling invoices. Not stolen, not fraud, just invisible, and how we found it. I almost didn't take the call. Wednesday, late afternoon. I was wrapping up for the day. A colleague I'd worked with years ago on an ACMI deal rang me up. We hadn't spoken in maybe 2 years. He told me he was running a corporate flight department now. 3 jets, couple hundred sectors a year across Europe. Everything running fine, no emergency. But he had this feeling. You know the kind. That nagging thing where you know something's off, but you can't put your finger on it. He said, and I remember this word for word, "We've been operating for 5 years, and I just realized nobody has ever actually looked at our numbers. Not really." So I told him I'd take a look. Honestly, I expected to find a few thousand euros in savings, maybe some outdated contracts, the kind of thing you tidy up in a few weeks. I was wrong, by a factor of 10. We started by asking for invoices, 12 months of ground handling invoices. Every airport, every provider, all 3 aircraft. Sounds simple when I say it like that. In reality, complete nightmare. 18 countries, dozens of handling agents. And here's the thing about ground handling in Europe. There is no standard. Every handler has their own format, their own currency, their own definition of what standard service even means. Some sent Excel files, some sent scanned PDFs. You know the kind where the text is slightly crooked and you can see the edge of the scanner bed. And one guy, I still laugh about this, sent us a photo of a handwritten invoice, pen on paper, photographed on his phone, emailed as a JPEG. That was his official invoice. And that's when it hit me. If this is how the billing works, imagine what the pricing looks like. 4 weeks. That's how long it took to get everything into one spreadsheet. Cost per turnaround, broken down by airport, provider, aircraft type, time of day. The kind of overview that should exist from day one in any flight operation, but almost never does. 247,000 euros. Annual ground handling spend for a 3-jet operation. Now, that number on its own isn't crazy. Business jets in Europe, 500 sectors, 18 countries. Ground handling isn't cheap. But when I started breaking it down, things stopped making sense. 4 of their most used airports they visited 15 to 20 times a year, had no negotiated rates. 0. They were paying walk-in prices. The kind of rate you'd get if you showed up once, unannounced, with no relationship and no history. Think about that. Up to 100 visits at a single airport over 5 years. And nobody had ever picked up the phone to say, "We come here a lot. Can we talk about pricing?" I called the owner of the flight department. There was this long pause, the kind where you can feel someone doing math in their head. Then he said, "I just assumed the management company handled that." They didn't. It wasn't their job. And it wasn't anyone else's job either. It was just a gap. The kind that costs you real money, quietly, for years. I don't usually get emotional about cost audits. It's data, numbers. You analyze, recommend, move on. But this one got to me. After-hours surcharges were eating 11% of the entire handling budget. 11%. When I dug into the data, roughly a third of those surcharges were for flights that could have departed 30 to 45 minutes earlier, with zero impact on the passenger. The schedule was padded, not for safety, not for crew rest, just because that's how it had always been done. 200 to 500 euros per turnaround, vanishing into after-hours fees. Because nobody had ever sat down with the schedule in one hand and the invoices in the other and asked one simple question. Do we actually need to depart at this time? That's not a complex optimization problem. That's a phone call. But here's why nobody caught it. Invoices were processed one at a time. Each one looked normal on its own. You only see the pattern when you lay out 500 invoices side by side. And nobody does that. Aircraft flies, invoice arrives, finance pays it, Everybody moves on, until somebody counts what moving on actually costs. Once you start looking, you can't stop. It's like pulling a thread. 2 airports were charging premium hangarage for overnight stops under 8 hours. Ramp parking with GPU would have cost 60% less. But hangar when overnight was the default instruction. Nobody questioned whether a 6-hour stop actually needs a hangar. Currency conversion margins running 3.2% above interbank rates. Fix that with one payment channel change. 1 week. Nobody had checked. Fuel coordination fees charged on top of the fuel supplier's own fees. The crew could have ordered fuel directly. Same truck, same fuel, without the handler's markup. But the handler arranges fuel was just how it was done. And then the phantom services. GPU billed when the aircraft's APU was running fine. Crew transport invoiced when the crew walked to the terminal. And my personal favorite, de-icing preparation. In July. Not fraud. I want to be very clear. Not malice. Just default service packages applied automatically, without anyone checking whether they applied to that specific situation, at that airport, on that day. Each one small on its own. 10 euros here, 50 there. But all of them adding up over 5 years to something that was not small at all. Now, in the movie version, you fire everybody. Bring in all new providers. Dramatic music. Everyone claps. That's not what happened. That's almost never what happens when you do this properly. We renegotiated. But this time, we had data. Not feelings. Not complaints. Hard data. Here's what you charge us. Here's what 3 other providers at this airport charge for the same thing. Here's our volume. Let's find something that works for both sides. 14 out of 18 providers stayed. Same companies, same people on the ground, better terms, and the conversations were surprisingly easy. When you bring benchmarking data to a negotiation, you're not threatening, you're informing. The 4 who didn't stay? They looked at the data and said, "That's our price." Fair enough. We found alternatives. Total spend went from 247,000 to 192,000. That's 55,000 euros saved, every single year. There's a part of this story that surprised me. After the new contracts were in place, I asked the flight crew whether anything had changed on the ground. At most airports, they noticed nothing. Same handlers, same faces, same process, which is the best possible outcome. But at 2 stations with new providers, the crew said things actually got better. Faster turnarounds. Someone finally answering the phone during pre-arrival calls. One captain, 25 years in the business, told me, "The old handlers were fine. These guys are keen." But here's what I didn't expect. The crew gave us something invaluable: verification. They knew which services were actually delivered and which were just invoiced. They knew when the GPU was plugged in and when it wasn't. I'd never thought to ask flight crews about billing accuracy. Now, it's the first thing I do on every project. But honestly, the 55,000 isn't the part I think about most. After everything was done, I called a few station managers to close the loop. Good relationships matter in this business. One guy in Germany, 20-something years handling business jets. He said something I haven't been able to shake. He said, "You know, Flavian, most of our good clients just disappear. They stop booking one day. Nobody calls, nobody explains. We find out months later they switched because someone offered 50 euros less per turnaround." Then he said, "I'd rather have this conversation once a year than lose someone like that." He's right. And it says something uncomfortable about how this industry works. We avoid the awkward conversations. We let relationships run on autopilot because it's easier than sitting down with a spreadsheet and saying, "This doesn't add up." The providers aren't the villains. Most run fair businesses. The problem is that nobody asks. Ground handling is one example. But the principle applies everywhere in aviation. Maintenance reserves nobody's rebaselined in 3 years. Insurance renewals processed on autopilot. Fuel procurement that's probably fine but hasn't been compared to alternatives in 18 months. Anywhere pricing is fragmented and nobody's running comparisons, there's money sitting in the invoices. Not stolen, not hidden, just unclaimed. Because asking the question feels awkward, or like someone else's job. Your invoices are telling you something. I promise you they are. The question is whether you're going to look, or keep moving on. That's it for today. If this resonated with you, If you've seen this kind of thing in your own operation, leave a comment. I read all of them. And if you want to talk about your specific situation, whether it's ground handling, maintenance, contracts, anything operational, reach out. That's what we do at Cluster Aviation. I'm Flavian. I'll see you in the next one.